Welcome back, everybody. Long time no see, but we're giving it another whirl. Winter break has taken a hold of us, but we're back. The Clutch Pearl podcast. No idea what episode number we're on now, but but here we are. We have a lot to catch up on. So, Noah, you want to start us off? Let's dive right into it.
Yeah, first off, I don't know if you've seen or not, but we posted on our Twitter. We came up with some rankings and went through a point system on what those rankings are. Uh, First of all, I'll explain the point system. The point system is basically Grant and I both put in votes of what we thought, and we had some. So we did 26-2 in the top 25, and that one gets 26, so on and so forth. And that's how the points go there. And then any team that we felt received consideration but wasn't in our top 25 got 1 point each. Grant, what kind of stood out to you on the overall top 25? And you can even mention, mine or yours, whatever.
So, when I was going through this, I would say outside of really the top 10, you can almost interchange 11 through 25, in my opinion. That
Yeah.
was that was what was hardest. That was what was hardest for me when I was making the list because like there's marginal difference in a lot of these teams.
But
If you
even
start
look,
if you start if you start comparing head to heads and like who they've beaten, who they've lost to, and how that compares to other, it gets even more
yeah,
confusing. So
yeah.
really outside of
Uh,
outside of the top 10, I really just kind of put down who I thought should be in there, and you could switch it up however you want.
yeah.
So if you have
And
any complaints against me, just remember that.
well, and even if you look at the Clutch Pearl 25 and some, which is what we're calling our top 25 as a whole, look at the top 10. Numbers 5 through 8 all received the same amount of points, which is Houston, Illinois, Kansas, and Kentucky. And I think we would agree that all four of these teams are very similarly built and talented teams. And I think
Yeah.
out of that group, I really want to see more out of. I think Houston. I think eventually is going to end up falling behind the group of the other three,
Houston is
because
still
I
they're
don't
still unproven to this point, in my opinion. They really haven't played. They haven't played the caliber of schedule that everyone else
know.
has. That's
And
that's gonna change,
and
but as of right now,
every time they've went on the road in a tough game, they've lost recently so far
yeah.
in Big 12 play. And
That's another thing with our rankings. We released those on, was it Tuesday or Wednesday?
I
And
think it was
since
Tuesday.
then, multiple teams in our top 10 have lost.
Yeah. And but what I was getting at too was the fact that I don't think we've seen the best of Kansas yet. I don't think we've seen the best of Kentucky yet. And most importantly, we had definitely not seen the best of Illinois yet. And
I wanna
that clearly showed at Northwestern.
I wanna I want to hit on what you just said about Kansas and Kentucky, and we've talked about it. We talked about it in earlier episodes. I guess it was like 2 months ago now. But if you're picking a team, if you have to pick one of those two to go farther in the tournament to make the Final Four, if the tournament started today, are you going Kentucky or Kansas?
I'm going Kansas, and it's a lot about their experience and also Big Z. He's really, really good. That addition to Kentucky, late addition. But the thing about Kentucky is that it's kind of since he's came back, especially like him and Bradshaw together is kind of a wonky fit, and that showed in their loss recently. Or I don't know if they lost; it was a close game. Can't remember. But
They got walloped by South Carolina this week. I think it was South
yeah,
Carolina.
yeah, that's what it was. But Kansas, on the other hand, yes, DeJuan Harris has his limitations as a point guard. He's really good all around, but sometimes can struggle shooting the basketball. But Kevin McCullough is one of the best two-way guards in the country. And I think most importantly, something that we never really saw at Michigan much, Hunter Dickinson is shooting lights out from three. He's been their best three-point shooter. And I think that is, I mean, a game changer for them because it's just like how Coleman Hawkins has changed the game for Illinois since he started shooting it well from three. Is the fact that when you have a 5 man that shoots the three like that, I mean, it just changes everything.
I don't have much more to talk about outside of our top 10 on this. Like I said, I think you can interchange everybody. There's, I do want to talk about the just missed category. And remind me again who you put in yours
Uh,
and
I
tell me
had
why.
I had Colorado State because I think they're a really good squad, definitely a tournament squad, but I just felt like they've struggled in a couple games that top 25 teams don't struggle against. Tournament teams can struggle in, but top 25 teams don't. Uh, BYU, same example. I think uh, I had a hard time not putting them in my top 25, but uh, it was important to me to get Alabama in the top 25, and most people's they're probably not in. But for me, there's a reason their net ranking is so high, and they win every game they should win. Now they've lost every game they should have lost too, but that carries a lot of weight come tournament time, seeding wise. So I felt like I had to get them in there. So because of that, BYU is kind of my casualty. If I had to pick a number one just missed, it was them. Princeton, I really like. They got that one kid that is just a superstar. He's going to end up transferring to a major school probably after this year, and he's going to make a huge, huge impact. And then Ole Miss has struggled recently in conference play, but Chris Beard's squad, I mean, they were what 13-0 for a while. You know that's got to carry some weight. And St. John's is turned in so far. They're at the top of the conference in the Big East. This
I want to point out real quick who told you in an earlier episode to not give up on the Big East. Don't hate on them. It's going to be a fun conference to watch, and I was right. They have
It
been.
has been. I mean, upsets galore in that conference, and it's going to hurt them actually come Selection Sunday because they just keep beating up on each other. So there's going to be a lot of teams that should have been tournament teams that are going to end up on the bubble, probably still get in, but they're going to be really low seeds because and they're going to be dangerous to a school like say Tennessee ends up. They're probably going to end up on the two line because some of the losses Tennessee's had. Uh, so say Tennessee's going to draw one of those teams probably in the second round. They're going to draw a Big East school that kind of was underseeded because of some struggles in conference play, and they might be susceptible to an upset. And so that's going to be really interesting to see. And talking about conference play here, uh, we've got more to talk about on the Big 12. But first, I want to hear about your just miss category.
Well, you had Alabama in. I had them just out. Had we made these rankings after the Auburn game, I would have catapulted them way up. My reasoning for leaving them out was like you said earlier, they've won what they're supposed to. They've lost what they're supposed to. So like they've been they've been kind of hard to put a pin on. Like they haven't been bad, they haven't been good. They've been right in the middle. I think the Auburn game showed what they can be, how good they can be. But yeah, when as of Tuesday when these were released, I had them just out.
Yeah,
I needed more proof.
and
And
yeah, that definitely gave you some.
it was it was kind of the same way with Ole Miss. And they really intrigue me because I think I think they're right there. Beard has those guys close to being really good. I just watched them destroy Arkansas 3 days ago. Granted, everyone's destroying Arkansas right now, but they have a lot of pieces. They have a lot of dudes. As soon as that clicks, they can be a dangerous team come March. They'll get into the tournament, but they're kind of in the same boat as Alabama where they beat everyone they're supposed to. Maybe Memphis was their best win up until conference play, and that they're right there. Same with Alabama.
Here's a
Border
question for you.
borderline 20 to 25, somewhere in that range for them.
Yeah, here's a question for you though. You mentioned Chris Beard. Kenny Payne is probably getting fired from Louisville after the year. Can we not agree
He
with that?
should. He should.
He probably should have already been fired, but they're giving him the benefit of the doubt. because he did have a good class coming in. Does Chris Beard take that job? That's a hard job to turn down. I mean, that's got some of the most NIL in the country you're getting there at Louisville.
It,
You're not getting a lot of that NIL at Ole Miss.
it's it's a tough say. It's really a tough say because you're telling me with the like I'm sure you know people who have graduated from Ole Miss, some of the people who have, they have a wealthy alumni base. They can easily ramp up their NIL spending if they want to. They have the capability. They just don't for basketball right now.
And I don't
But
think it's
but
even.
with him there, I think you could see like it's a down year for Arkansas, but you could see the same kind of progression that Musselman has made at Arkansas with Beard at Ole Miss, in my opinion.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know. I don't ever see that school dropping money for the top tier guys. And Chris Beard's used to coaching Terrence Shannon Jr. and Kevin McCullough on the same team. Like he's used to
If you're
coaching dudes.
aside from money though, if you're trying to win a championship right now, I know it's not football, so it's a little different, but would you rather be in the SEC or the ACC?
In basketball, probably the ACC, especially because I think what's likely to happen, the ACC is going to dispose, and Louisville is going to go to the Big East. They're going to go back to the Big East, I think. And but right now, I mean, nothing prepares you. I don't care what anybody says. Nothing prepares you more to go win a national title, or at least go to the Final Four, than going and playing at Cameron Indoor and the Dean Smith Center. I mean, look, it seems like even though the ACC has been so down the last few years, you're still seeing one, two, sometimes three ACC teams in the Elite Eight every year. And I think that's a big reason why, just that preparation.
Do you do you think that has to do with the preparation of playing in that conference or the caliber of coaches that have been in that conference? We're losing some, but you had like your Boeheims and Krzyzewskis and your Williams at UNC.
I mean,
The-
in a sense, but
I
like
think right
Jim
now
Laranga at Miami last year.
Jim Larinaga is Boeheim's lost brother, and you can't convince me otherwise.
Yeah,
They
but
look so similar.
yeah, I mean, I see that side of it.
I am a homer, but I think I think the power dynamics in college basketball are shifting. Like you've had your perennial blue bloods in the SEC. Yes, you have Kentucky. Florida's been there. They haven't been in a while, but they have been in the past. But I think the balance of power is kind of shifting, and the SEC is becoming a better basketball league than the ACC.
I mean, yeah, but once again, though, I don't ever see the SEC. They pour so much money into football. I don't ever seeing it being the premier year in year out basketball conference. If Louisville goes back to the Big East or goes to the Big Ten or goes to the Big 12, which is kind of their three options from where we're sitting right now, but with the Big East being the most likely, uh, yeah, Louis. I mean, that's the three premier basketball conferences. So, and Louisville, I mean, you can't argue with history. I think Beard undoubtedly would take it. The question is, will the school of Louisville, after the Patino experiment, go back to coach with that baggage? So we'll have to see. It's
I
an
don't
interesting
think
topic.
I don't think Louisville actually cares that much about their coach's character. If you look at who they've hired historically,
Yeah, I mean, that's true. Very true. But all right, we ready to move to the next topic?
yeah.
All
Let's
right, let's hit you. Let's hit you with this one. So, looking back, I was looking back because I'm looking at, first of all, let me say something. ESPN Plus has got to go. I don't care if we got to add
it's so
another channel.
bad.
It's got to go. Okay, let's start with that. But I was going through. I'm always looking at games coming up, especially top 25 matchups, and I look and it seems like every single night of a conference game, the Big 12 has got 2 top 25 teams playing each other every time.
on ESPN Plus all
Yes,
the time.
and that's what I was about to say. Why are these games on ESPN Plus? I mean, this is probably the most fun a league has been in league play since the Big Ten had Io and Kofi at Illinois, had Luca Garza and Keegan Murray at Iowa, had EJ Liddell at Ohio State, had Trace Jackson Davis at Indiana, Dickinson and Howard and Franz Wagner at Michigan. Like I go on and on. Like all those squads were undoubtedly top 25. Three of them were perennial top 10 teams. And that's not even including Tom Izzo's Michigan State, which was a perennial, top 5 seed contender back then, Like this is what that league's like. And that would be like putting, Io and Luca Garza, Illinois, Iowa, big rivalry game going at it on ESPN Plus. What are we doing, man?
I have another gripe with ESPN actually. Why are we having game day at Bud Walton? Arkansas is absolutely terrible. They're going to get ran out
I
of the gym.
I saw. I think it was Mason Newberry. The Arkansas analyst. He tweeted about that. He was like, "I love that they're coming to Bud Walton," but he was like, "We have no business." He was like, "There's
No.
plenty of other good games that they could have put on going on in the SEC."
Let's while we're on that topic, let's talk a little bit about the Razorbacks. We got to clear the air. We both talked really highly on them beginning of the season, and they are pitiful. They are bad. This is one of the worst Arkansas teams I have seen in my lifetime. That's counting the Mike Anderson era and before that.
Yeah,
What from an outside perspective, what what is this team missing?
I think they're simply just missing grit. Like
I
I,
wholeheartedly
I
agree.
I keep watching games thinking I'm gonna see it. And I told you at the beginning of the year, I don't know if you remember, I was like, I really, really like the talent that Muss has put on this Arkansas squad. But what scares me about them is Davenport at times was very lazy at Cincinnati. Dude he can show up and score 40, or he can not show up and, you know, score 0 on any given night. L. Ellis,
That's pretty much the whole team.
yes, and L. Ellis, the other example I had, I'm like, that guy, he's got a lot of talent. I mean, he's 5-star for a reason before he went to Louisville. But, I mean, you saw what kind of show that was at Louisville last year. So, like, he didn't come from a great environment. And, like, I think those two guys, it seems like, have rubbed off on the whole squad. Like, the only guy that plays hard's Devo. Only guy. And at times, I feel like he's even been checked out.
Devo and the freshmen are the only ones. And I'll give Tremont Mark. He always shows up, but he's the only one who can score the ball. Devo can't score the ball this year. Trevin Brazil should be a first round draft pick. He's been non-existent for the last month.
Yeah.
But to hit on what you said, the grit factor is really what I think. Where you look at last year, you had a guy in Aldi's Tony who kind of undersized to play in the post, but would play in the post, bang around, grab a rebound, be physical, like be that physical centerpiece that a team needs. The year before that, you had Jalen Williams doing that. The year before that, Jalen Williams again. And the year before that, you just had five guys who could all do that. And I think that's what this team's missing. I don't know. Like Devo Davis should be a leader. Clearly he's not doing something. You have what, 4 or 5 returning players from last year, and you have Musselman saying that they can't figure out the defense still. I'm just not buying it. I I think it's just a whiff on the recruiting the portal, which
Yeah,
it's gonna happen when you have the roster turnover that Musselman does, you're gonna miss sometimes. And
yeah,
this was just a miss of colossal proportions.
yeah. They remind me of an extended version, like somehow. worse. Like Underwood at least had some guys he had control of last year, but same type of attitude. You just have a lot of divas, I guess would be the way to
Yeah,
call it. Illinois
we
last
got
year
guys more
had
concerned about their hair color than winning the game.
yes, you had Matthew Meyer. You didn't know what kind of mustache he was going to have, how long his hair was on any given night. He was a diva. Sky Clark always messing with his hair. Leaves midweight, diva. Jaden Epps wasn't even cheering for his teammates when he got put on the bench, diva. And I mean, look what's happened to Georgetown this year. They gave Jaden Epps the key, and they're terrible. Jaden Epps has been good scoring the ball, and credit to him, he has been phenomenal. But he's not a team player, and I think you're seeing that a lot with uh, Arkansas this year. And just like I mentioned, I think the biggest culprits are Jeremiah Davenport, and most the biggest culprit is LLs.
I mean, you could go down the list and you have subpar effort. Effort. The easiest thing for a team to have is effort, and you're missing it. You're missing it on five of the eight guys you want to play.
I
If
will
I if I
say
had to
another
if I
one.
had to make a list of the people who actually look like they're trying out there, Devo looks like he tries. He just hasn't been very good. Pinion, when he gets in, he tries. He's not athletic enough to compete in the SEC. He can shoot the lights out, but he can't guard an SEC guard. Uh,
I
Walker,
like
the
Brazil
freshman,
still. Brazil's played pretty hard for the most part too, I feel like. But
he does, but he's got an attitude. He does.
yeah,
I love the dude to death
that's
because he's a freak of nature. He's a walking highlight reel when he wants to be.
he's he's kind of your Matthew Meyer. He's a guy with a load of talent, and on any given night will take it over and win you a ball game like he did against Duke. But
Yeah.
excuse me, at the same time, yeah, got that diva personality.
So how much, aside from the recruiting standpoint, obviously there were some misses in recruiting. How much of this do you actually put on Muss, or how much of it do you put on just this is not the team that's going to do it? Like they just don't get it.
I mean, some of it's on Muss. Uh,
Well, I mean, this is a guy he's proved the last 4 years he can put together a roster and win
But
at a high
yeah,
level with
that's what
it.
I was gonna say. You can't make drastic changes. Like you should not. I don't think you should change his staff unless somebody gets hired away from him. Like I just think you live and you learn. Illinois is a perfect example. Brad Underwood last year straight up said he was like, I messed up. I handed the keys to too many young guys. First of all, and second of all, he was like, some of my transfers just had wonky fits. He was so focused on getting those star players because he needed a star, to replace Io and Kofi and Trent Frazier. And so he went and got Meyer and Shannon, and those guys both were great last year, but did not work together. And it was more a Meyer situation than it was Shannon because Meyer couldn't go to Soul, and he just wanted to hit step back threes. Now this year, I mean, look at the super senior lineup that Underwood usually closes with. You have Shannon is now that he's back. Uh, I mean, already guarding everybody's best player since he came back. That's really what Illinois was missing when he was gone, more than his offense, honestly. Uh, you got Marcus Damask, proven veteran, just plays hard. Both those guys crash the glass hard. Justin Harmon, little bitty guy, but boy, he gets a lot of offensive rebounds and doesn't miss from either corner ever. I've never seen somebody make more corner threes.
Just a second on that. You know why? Because he actually plays with effort, something that we don't do in Fayetteville. But
Yeah, and Quincy Guerrier, I have never seen. Thought nobody would ever play harder than Trent Frazier than Jacob Grandison in an Illini uniform, and it scared me. Once those two were both gone, it really did because I'm like, I don't know if people are ever going to get Underwood, and I was questioning whether Underwood was ever going to win with his coaching style because guys didn't play hard enough, right? Oh yeah, jokes on me. Quincy Guerrier, I mean that dude just plays so hard, and Hawkins, he's finally got Hawkins in control, and it's a big difference.
Just one more thing I want to say about Arkansas, then we'll switch to Illinois because I have a few things I want to say on Illinois too. But Arkansas is generally a ravenous, irrational fan base when it comes to sports. But props to the hog Twitter for not calling for Musselman's head, even though this is a clearly a failed year in basketball. I think they understand what they have there, and there's some things out of his control with this team. And look forward to next year. Let's switch it up because that was depressing. I hate that they're this bad. But so
Well, that's what.
Illinois,
Yeah, well, that's what I was explaining with Illinois. I more wasn't even trying to change the subject to Illinois. Like I was just using them as an example because I watch them so much. Like you have those guys, you have Ty Rodgers in the starting lineup. Like those guys play hard. Like Underwood saw that, understood it, and that's what I was kind of getting to. I kind of got a little bit off topic, but that's what Muss needs to see. He needs to watch Underwood. Honestly, watch Muss as a blueprint and kind of targeted guys like that in the portal, excuse me, from last year's team and the year before, not really this year. Uh, now Muss needs to watch Underwood and say, look at the guys he targeted because they have very similar coaching styles.
mhm, uh, forgot what I was gonna say, but we are switching it to Illinois now. So Terrence Shannon Jr. is back after his suspension. We won't go into details of the suspension, but he's back. First game back, statistically, not a not a great game for him, but his presence back, even though they lost the game, is huge for the Illini.
Yeah, Justin Harmon said it after the game, which I mean they're roommates. Obviously, they love each other, you know. But Justin Harmon says we finally feel like we have our whole team. Like he was like, we were gonna be fine without him. Like, you know, we understood it's the way it was, like it happens, you know, you lose guys, this and that. But he was like, this is the first time all year that we felt like we've had our whole team. Cause you know, Moretti got hurt, Hawkins was hurt at the beginning of the year. So you know, he said it's the first time we've had our whole team and damn it feels good, you know? And
I will say
Shannon.
this, you see if you agree with this or not, but in a way, Shannon's suspension is kind of a blessing in disguise because since his suspension, Coleman Hawkins has raised his level of play so much. He's become the leader that Shannon was, in my opinion. And hope if that puts him in a flow, he continues to play how he was, and Shannon gets back on track to where he was before the suspension. That's a scary team.
Well, that's what I was actually getting to, and it's not just Hawkins. It really, I mean, Damask was in a groove anyway, but he was kind of streaky before Shannon went out. Since Shannon went out, Damask and Hawkins have easily been the most consistent players on the team. I mean, those guys are good for 20 a night. Damask is actually averaging, I think, the most points of anybody in Big Ten play, like of any team. Damask has been phenomenal, and I mean, he's just going to town, especially on the offensive end. And he's holding his own defensively, which was a big question. You know how his a little bit less athletic ability, but he's so smart. Like I saw Ant Wright tweeted about it. He's like, "Holy Marcus Damask!" Like he's like, I haven't seen a player this smart on a basketball court in a long time. He's like, if this dude wants to be a coach when he's done playing, like he can be, and he could be a head coach right away. Like he's just one of those guys that's just got an incredible basketball IQ. And then Hawkins, yeah, like you said, I mean, he had 20 against Northwestern the other
Yeah.
night. I mean, he's been in an incredible groove. Uh, Same could be said about Gurrier. Gurrier was starting to find his shot before Shannon went out, but really found it when he left. But the most important piece, I'm going to ask you what you think about this. Justin Harmon, because he wasn't really playing that much before because, you know, he hadn't found his groove offensively or defensively. And now he's turned into the sixth man and is probably going to win the Big Ten sixth man of the year if he keeps it up. He's been good for 18 off the bench every game since Shannon first went down, and even since he's came back, first went down. So, and I'm not worried about Shannon one bit either. You know, it takes a little bit. It's just like the beginning of the
No,
year when you're kind of finding. finding your legs again. He's going to have to find his legs again. And once he finds his legs, he's probably going to be shooting it again. I mean, he was shooting at a 45% clip from three before he got suspended. So
I am I'm incredibly impressed with how the team, a lot of teams, like you lose your best player, like by and far your best player, they're down and out. They're gonna pout about it. Season's over. Like you might as well call the chickens back to the coop, But I think I think it goes beyond just Underwood. I'm sure he had a lot to do with it, but the dynamic on this team to actually pull together and be
well,
like,
that's
hey, we
that's
don't
what
we're missing this guy, but it don't matter because we got us. And like
that's
I
that's
think it made them
exactly
better.
what. Yeah, that's exactly what Underwood said. He was like, I've never, and he keeps reiterating it. He was like, I've loved every team, I've had in different ways and different dynamics, but he was like, I've never seen a team more cohesive since I've been coaching, like, that he coached. And that's saying something because he had a Stephen F. Austin team that made a deep run in the tournament, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Uh,
Mhm.
that Oklahoma State team he had, he always talked about how close all the players were. And that Io Trent Kofi team, uh, in 2021. I mean, that's about as close as any team can get. And for him to say undoubtedly these guys are closer, like that says a lot. And the Shannon thing, when he was gone, they were mostly only playing six players. And Shannon adding that seventh player, that's what they were really missing because they want to make a deep run in the tournament. You're not going to make a deep run with six players. And that's what Underwood kept saying. He's like, we got to either get Danja or Dre Gibbs Lawhorn like really going because we need that seventh guy. And then, oh, Shannon comes back.
I think they're completely retooled, ready to go. They still have a legitimate shot at the Big Ten. I
I,
haven't
I,
I'll be honest, I haven't watched much Purdue lately. I know they're still doing Purdue things, but some
uh,
I've really have never seen a team come together and get better after missing their best player. Like
yeah.
I know they didn't win every game without him, and they lost a game when he came back. But I don't know, they got a different look about them.
You know what it reminds me of? I hate to make this comparison because they were a national champion. But you remember the year Baylor won the national championship, when halfway through the year, Davion Mitchell, didn't he break his ankle or something and was out for a while? And
Hmm.
that team, like just like this one, somehow got better without their best player. And then when he came back, they were like, oh, like we're legit, And
Yeah,
I,
and then
I
they
think
just
that
beat the hell out of everybody in the
yeah,
tournament.
we're getting kind of the same vibes from this Illinois team. Now, obviously, like they're still susceptible to the upset. One thing, like Boo Booey, I mean, torched him, and he's not the only guy that's torched him. They got to figure out, and I think, like I said, the more Shannon gets back, the more that's going to help because he's going to get his legs back under him. But they got to figure out how to avoid giving up 25 plus to a opposing player every single night because that keeps happening. But yeah, I don't see Purdue beating them on senior night in Champaign, but Wisconsin is the wild card because they got a pretty good draw schedule wise, and they also seem to just get lucky. Like teams have them on the ropes, and they just make a couple shots. Max Klesmit and AJ Storr have been really good. Talk about acing the transfer portal. The Big Ten as a whole has really aced the transfer portal. Matt Painter is not a big fan of the portal. Goes out and gets one guy, Lance Jones. It's been great for them. Huge addition. Underwood, I mean, we've mentioned time and time again. Harmon, Gurrier, and Damask can't have a better class, I don't think, portal wise. And
Hmm.
then you have Ben Krieke at Iowa. He's the only reason they're even a bubble team. Uh, And yeah, you have, I mean, I could just keep naming on and on. And Fred Hoiberg at Nebraska had a really good transfer class. So, like, I said at the beginning of the year, on the podcast, that's what you got to do is ace the portal in today's world. And the Big Ten did it.
Uh, kind of on that note, we don't have to spend a lot of time on this. How would you if you had a letter grade for this season, how would you grade it so far? Just overall, like college basketball as a whole,
A
entertainment
plus.
wise,
It has been
competition wise.
awesome. I know you missed some games over winter break, but oh my Lanta, man. Upset after upset. I had a Twitter thread the one week. I think it was like all but 4 or 5 top 25 teams lost, and all but 2 of those, 20 or whatever, that 19 or 20 that lost were to teams outside of the top 25. Like, the portal, like, people can say what they want about it, but it has been great for college basketball. I think it's created an absolute madness and a lot of excitement with a lot of fan bases that didn't get it before the portal. And the coaches like Underwood and Painter that can find a way to use it, but not overuse it and get the right players instead of the great players, so to speak. Uh, that's how, you succeed. Okay, so next topic. What, Grant, if you remember in our preseason picks, we picked Final Four. What is your biggest miss that you feel?
I mean, the answer to this one is so obvious because we just spent 15 minutes talking about it earlier, but Arkansas, without a doubt, was my biggest miss. I mean,
Yeah, they're probably not even going to
they're
make the
not even gonna
tournament.
make the tournament.
uh,
And I
yeah,
would say to a lesser degree, I say I missed on Baylor a little bit. They're by no means are they bad, but they're not elite like I thought they would be.
no, I agree. You can tell, you know, you always say when you look at things like, for example, Illinois and Arkansas both last year, they had pretty tough non-conference schedules, but it wasn't like top tier non-conference schedules. And this year, when you look at the teams, basically every team that was in our top 10 has played a pretty tough schedule, I feel like. And
Hmm.
Baylor did not. Scott Drew, this is probably the weakest schedule Scott Drew's ever scheduled in the non-conference. So it makes you think, did Scott Drew know something that we didn't? We gave him the benefit of the doubt, but maybe that's why.
I will say in hindsight though, their win over Auburn looks really good.
Yes, I would agree with that.
That's probably their best win up to this
Definitely.
point.
But the thing about that one is, and they put some weight in it when they're doing the NCAA tournament seedings. How much weight do you put in that Auburn squad wasn't by any means playing their near their best basketball yet? Like that was a team definitely still figuring out their stuff. Which credit to
Yeah.
both of those coaches though for playing that game that early in the year.
I mean, that's such a hard metric to put a finger on. Like as a committee, I know they try to do it, but you still beat the team. I mean, they're still good right now. It's not like it's different dudes right
Yeah,
now. That was 3 months ago. It's the same people. I mean, they could have gone one of two directions, and they just chose to go up instead of down. But it still got beat by Baylor. Baylor still beat them. So
yeah.
you still got to look at that when you're weighing it, in my opinion. Um,
I agree. I just wanted to see what your thoughts were on that.
yeah, I would still say that's their best win. Auburn's good. I'm gonna hit some more on Auburn here in a second, but first we gotta get your biggest misses.
Okay, yeah. I'm gonna list two, but one more to agree than the other. First of all, I think my biggest miss, because I believe I could be wrong, but I believe my picks were Marquette, Illinois, Kansas, and North Texas. I think were my 4 picks, if I remember right. And Kansas and Illinois obviously did not miss on those teams. I mean, every analyst out there is saying they're one of like 7 or 8 teams that is a definite Final Four contender. But I feel my biggest miss is actually Marquette. I think they're a lot more susceptible to the upset than I thought. And the biggest thing is not their fault and not my fault either. Because if they still had Cam Jones, I think it's Cam Jones. It's one of the Joneses, maybe Sean. Uh, actually, I think it is Sean. But if they still had Sean Jones coming off their bench, their six man. Um, Definitely still a Final Four contender. But now they're down to five, six guys that they could truly play. It kind of tied Shaka's hands a little bit because they're just not the same team without him. They miss him a lot. They miss his off the bench scoring presence. He won them a couple games just going on a heater off the bench, and he's out for the year, and so I don't see any shot that they make the term or make the Final Four anymore. So that's the one pick I think I missed on, and if they make the Final Four, we're going to be laughing at this one for sure. But my other one I do want to touch on, I thought it was really bold when I picked it, the North Texas Mean Green to the Final Four. And I was live tweeting them as I was watching them play SMU last night. The American is a really, really good conference and a lot better than I thought it was going to be. So FAU's got a lot more competition than we expected. And North Texas, they have a chance, but it would be an improbable Cinderella run, must I add.
Yeah,
But
I
I don't
mean,
think they're as big of a miss as
you can't
Marquette.
necessarily consider them as a miss because like that was a far-reaching long shot to begin with.
Yeah,
And you
and the
didn't I
fact
don't like that's one of the teams
kind
you
of
pick and you don't actually believe it, and then if they do it, you're like, oh, I fucking told you so.
And I mean, the fact that, so far this season, they've kind of reiterated everything I talked about. They were playing a tougher schedule this year, so they weren't going to win quite as many games. But being in the American, like they could make a FAU type run this year. I mentioned it, and I still believe it. I really do. But I can't call that my biggest miss because it was a long shot anyway. But I have to say, my Kansas and Illinois picks, I'm pretty proud about, and they could get upset, but Kansas actually turned out better than I thought they were going to be. I know that they're ranked lower because they played a really tough schedule, but and we'll play a tough schedule in the Big 12, and they're going to lose more games probably. But like I said earlier on the podcast, I really, really like that Hunter Dickinson is shooting it so well from three. That's a game changer. So
So
there's that.
so if you had to redo it today based on what we've seen so far, what's your new Final Four? I'm gonna
Well, I'm
assume you have two of the same.
Yes, Illinois and Kansas are staying in it, and they're both staying in the national title game. I'm keeping that the same, might I add. My other two teams are going to be the Yukon Huskies. I think Klingon coming back, uh, when he comes back, that team's going to be tough to beat too. Uh, so I think, they're going to be. I would say they're going to be a one seed, and they're probably going to be the one seed that goes to the Final Four. There's usually only one or two, it seems like, because I think Kansas is probably going to be a two or three. Illinois is probably going to be a two or three. They're neither one of those teams are probably going to be a one seed because they've had not necessarily bad losses, but they've just had enough losses to probably take them out of the top four spots. And then my other squad, whew, it's hard to pick for right now. The way college basketball has been a frenzy, but I think I'm going to go the Houston Cougars. I think there are two,
Who's
but something about Kelvin Sampson. His defense just plays in the postseason. So I'm gonna go Houston and Illinois facing off. Illinois gets that rematch from a couple years ago, and Kansas and UConn, and Illinois and Kansas win those games, and I'm sticking with Kansas being my title. Dickinson's gonna get his first win against the Illini.
all right. So I missed really badly on my first one. I mean, technically, I haven't missed yet. It hasn't happened, but I missed. So I'm going more aggressive here. Some of these aren't necessarily aggressive, but you'll see here in a second. First of all, I think they're going to be the number one overall seed, and they're going to get there. UConn, I got them. My second team, I'm hopping on the bandwagon. I'm putting Illinois there.
Woohoo!
Next, next, give me Auburn. I know they lost a couple nights ago, but you're on the road at Alabama, in-state rival, close game. I'm not putting a whole lot of weight into that. Give me Bruce Pearl squad. And then lastly, going two SEC teams in the Final Four, and they're going to play each other, and that's Tennessee. Tennessee and Auburn against each other in a Final Four game would be awesome because I'm an SEC homer, but that's who I want right now. I'll change it next week. Just just ask
Hey,
me again. But right now, that's who I'm picking.
how about if that does happen? That UConn Illinois matchup would be awesome because they both play the same styles. Both coaches are absolutely some of the most comical coaches in all of college basketball. Like that would be an awesome game to watch.
I think really if that Final Four happens, you mix and match those teams however you want, and you're gonna have a whale of a game.
Yep, I agree. And I think regardless, March Madness is going to be awesome this year because as we mentioned, there's more than just like, 10 or 12 teams like normal that you truly consider Final Four teams. Some teams will make Cinderella rounds, but it's more about they got lucky draws and just, shot out of their minds
Yeah.
one game, this and that. But this year, you could make a case for 20 to 30 teams. Like there might be a team that misses the tournament that misses, and then you're like, man, if they could have got in, they could have made a run.
Yeah, I this can be a topic for another time, but the portal and the volatility it has created in college basketball has to make it an absolute nightmare to be on that selection committee.
Yeah, I agree. Totally agree. Because yeah, I mean, well, and then you look at the impact that the Missouri Valley Conference has had on the Big Ten this year, and we're like, man, should a team like Southern Illinois, that won 30 games last year with Lance Jones, Xavier Johnson, who was one of the leading scorers in college basketball this year, and Marcus Damask, like, should they have got an at large last year? Should Bradley and Drake have got at larges? Now it's are we going to give more at larges to mid majors? The American's probably going to
Yeah,
get 4, and the Mountain West is probably going to get 5 or 6.
I think I think 3, 4 years down the road, that's going to become the reality. I don't think right now it's still early yet in the portal era for that to really happen. Like you still can't give a team that plays third in the MVC a bid over 5 games over 500 Power Five team who has 2 ranked wins. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but I will say this: the the Mountain West this year is going to get more bids than the Pac-12 and probably the Big Ten. I think the Big Ten is going to cap out at 5 teams. I think the only locks are Illinois, Wisconsin, and Purdue. I think
Yeah.
all three get top 3 or 4 seeds, uh, but they're the only locks. I think Michigan State has a chance; they're a bubble team. Nebraska has a chance; they're a bubble team. Iowa has a chance; they're a bubble team. And Ohio State's got a chance; they're a bubble team. And because of that, because of all that dynamic, it's going to cause when those teams beat each other, it's going to hurt their chances of getting in.
So on that note, I think we're getting near the end of stuff we had to discuss. So we do it every time. Noah, what made you clutch your pearls lately?
Well, normally, I'm always a little bit theatric, throwing out the big kahunas, this and that, trying to do something funny and fun. But I got to go with something negative this week. I mean, it just, instead of, like this, it's more like this. My pearls were twisted this week. And it's at Rodney Terry. He makes an absolute scene about
What a
the
baby.
horns down, this and that. Then, he says, we don't, tells the player, we don't jump up and down after wins in college basketball. That's not who we are as an organization, this and that, blah, 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 right? Goes on a rant and he did apologize. But then 2 or 3 days later, Texas gets a big win on Tyrese Hunter's layup, which truthfully, had Rodney Terry not done this, Tyrese Hunter's layup probably would have been my pick. Excuse me, sorry. But instead, it's Rodney Terry jumping up and down, fist pumping. I'm like, you can't say one thing and then do that. You can't. So
I mean,
twisting my pearls, not even clutching them, twisting them.
I can't wait till he comes to the SEC because those student sections and those teams are gonna eat him alive because of that. I bet you go look at the bookmarks on the tweet that first said that. There's probably 100,000 bookmarks. People just waiting for next year to use that against him.
Do you think that they bring him back? He's had one signature win, and it was that one on the Tyrese Hunter layup. I can very, very easily see Texas doing away with Rodney Terry.
Uh, it's a. I mean, I see where you're coming from,
Going
but
to the SEC,
I bet they won't do it next year. I bet they
maybe the
won't.
year after if they have another bad year.
Because
I
you
could see
can't
that
like
too.
he stepped in halfway through the season last year, and this is his first full season as a head coach. Like it's kind of unfair to him to give him that job and then take it away from him before he has the time
Yeah,
to really establish himself.
I see that too. All right, what clutch your pearls, Grant?
So my pearls have been clutched for about like 6 weeks straight now because the University of Arkansas Wild Band of Razorbacks are currently 1-5 or 6 or something. I don't even know. I can't even count that high because I'm an Arkansas fan. But we have a lot of losses in conference. We are terrible. Absolutely terrible. And the reason I'm clutching my pearl so hard about it is because I talk so much crap about how good this team was going to be, and I'm just having to eat humble pie every week when they're getting blown out by Ole Miss.
Yeah, 20-pointer, 20-point ball against Ole Miss.
I mean, the worst home loss ever. I think it was at least in Bud Walton against Auburn a few weeks ago. I mean, they won the game against A&M, but they blew a 20-point lead and won it on a buzzer beater by one
Yeah.
point. Like
Well,
it's
and I
just
know you
it's
mentioned it earlier, but this is a worse start to conference play than any of the years that Mike Anderson was head coach.
yeah. I mean, he can consistently pull 500, but like that's all I have to
Yeah,
say.
cover that face. Cover that face.
I'm about to start wearing a paper bag over my head in public because people know I'm a Razorback fan.
Life of living in Missouri.
Missouri's even worse though, so I don't feel that bad about that. I don't think they've won a conference game yet.
Yeah, Dennis Gates really surprised me. I thought they were going to be really good, and they just have not
No. I mean, I love every bit of it that they're not good, but
been.
I
All
don't have that much room to talk because they're only one win worse than us.
right. All right. Well, that caps our episode presented by Caleb Mawson Media. It's good to be back. Good to be back on and put out some content for you guys. Grant, you have anything?
No, I'm good. Boo pig.
Boo pig suit. All right, we're gonna get off of here. Hope you all have a good evening.